Hi guys, welcome to the channel. I've got a beauty for you today. Well, it's our very own BBC and British expat Seb Gorka, who's obviously a big Republican, a big MAGA proponent, and he's now part of the Trump team. And here he is, unfortunately having to speak to the BBC and Rottweiler in chief, Victoria, Derbyshire, and it's a very interesting conversation. Obviously, she immediately can't stand Seb Gorka because obviously she's got Trump derangement syndrome and can't stand Trump. So immediately, anybody who works for Trump, in terms of the BBC, is going to be hated. And you can see the vitriol coming out in the way she speaks to him and the disrespect. It's pretty appalling, really. But anyway, it's an interesting watch. So without further ado, here we go.
We stand with any nation that wishes to implement its sovereignty and which shares our values. And we know that those amongst our civilization that share our values understand, and we stand next to them shoulder to shoulder.
But not the women killed in the maternity hospital in southern Ukraine.
Is that a serious statement? I mean, do you really have
may I finish my sentence now,
No
please?
shame.
Let's go live to the White House to talk to Seb Gorka, who is the Senior Director for Counterterrorism for Trump's administration. Thank you very much for talking to the UK, Sebastian Gorka. I don't know if you just heard what a senior figure in the UK defence community has said about the Trump administration and its plan. The bastards are doing it.
Well, I hope that's fake news or not from somebody who actually cares about the special relationship between our two countries. So we had Crimea taken under the Obama administration. Not sure the government or Whitehall called the Obama administration bastards back then. Then for 4 years, we had peace under my boss in the first Trump administration. And then in comes the Biden administration and another invasion of Ukraine. Not sure the MOD was complaining about the last administration. So either, and I dearly hope it's fake news, or that person doesn't have any influence inside the MOD in the UK.
Have you just handed victory to President Putin on a plate?
After 100,000 casualties and the fact that Ukraine will remain an independent nation, that's as asinine a statement, as absolutely absurd and really irresponsible as we heard from The Economist just hours before the phone call saying that Kiev is being iced out of the discussions about the future of that region, as President Trump was literally about to call the president of the Ukraine. So sadly, fake news is not just a phenomena on our side of the Atlantic, but clearly amongst your colleagues in the press in the UK.
President Putin invaded a country, he took a load of land, he killed tens of thousands of Ukrainians, and now it appears the US is saying to him, yeah, you can keep the land that you've taken and stolen from your neighbour.
I like the fact that you think you know what the US is promising to anyone. We've been very clear on the campaign trail. President Trump and his team has been adamant since we came into this building 3 weeks ago that the number one priority is to stop the bloodshed. And you don't have to tell me the sun.
Look, guys, whether anybody likes it or not, this plan, somebody has got to start talking to somebody. I heard the other day from official sources that nobody in the Biden administration had spoken to anybody, any representative of Putin's in Russia over the last period, over the whole period of the war. Nobody's spoken to them about anything. So there's not even an inkling of starting the war. It was just about feeding the military-industrial complex more and more weapons, more and more money being sent to Ukraine, and then all brought back into people's pockets. You know, the corruption's out, off the scale. We've got Zelensky saying he doesn't know where half of the money is, So it was all about just keeping the old gravy train going, while thousands and thousands of Ukrainians are dying. 1 million people have died in this war on both, if you add both sides together. A million families devastated. And yet these people, like the BBC and look what's happened in Europe in the last few days, all whinging and moaning about what Trump's plan is. Isn't the main thing that we get a deal and stop the bloodshed? Trump just wants to end the war. Russia's going nowhere. Russia's not going on a crusade anywhere. Russia has a GDP of 2 trillion. 2 trillion. It's less than Texas. Do you think it's going to go on a crusade across the whole of Europe? No, it's not. So it's just a ridiculous argument, and somebody's got to start somewhere. And Trump is a transactional leader. He's not a jaw and nothing happens type person. He's a doer. He wants to get things sorted out, and he wants to end the war. And yes, there's going to have to be compromises on both sides, But bearing in mind Zelensky was basically installed by the CIA and Victoria Nuland anyway as a puppet president, because they didn't like the president that the people actually voted for in the Ukraine previously, because he was too pro-Russian. So the CIA did what they do everywhere in the world and and put the old regime change machine into operation, But something now has got to happen. We've got to stop this war. It's too much suffering, and that's what Trump's about. He's had enough. Anyway, back to the video.
One of those who literally escaped a communist regime, what the reality of the Russian Federation is today. So please stick to the facts. President Trump.
Absolutely, I absolutely accept that on the campaign trail.
Let me finish my sentence.
On the campaign trail, President Trump said he wanted to stop the war. He wanted to pull the US out today.
Will you let me finish my sentence?
Go ahead.
You let me? Whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Gaza, whether it is the European continent. Remember, this isn't in our hemisphere. This is in your hemisphere. This is in the Eurasian continent. Whether it is Ukraine, whether the Middle East or anywhere, the number one priority of the commander-in-chief is to stop the bloodshed, not to pander to establishment, left-wing, Ramona talking points. That's not why we're here.
If I may ask a question now, Mr. Gorka, and what he did not say on that campaign trail, but which your Defence Secretary did say today, is that it was unrealistic for Ukraine to want to go back to its pre-2014 borders. That is saying to President Putin, you can keep the land you took by force.
Well, geopolitics and politics is the art of the possible. So my question to you would be, what are you proposing? Is the British army going to deploy to the Donbass or to Crimea? President Trump wants the bloodshed to end, not to live in some cloud cuckoo land of that which is impossible. So the fact is, the fighting will cease because of President Trump, not thanks to the failure of Biden or Obama. And that is the beginning point for Europeans to try and sort out the situation on their continent. President Trump has been explicit. America first is not America alone. So the question is, what are our allies inside NATO going to do to secure the future of that landmass?
But in terms
does Uncle Sam have to fix everything for you?
In terms of the negotiations, it's clear there will be no US troops. It appears that US is pulling back support. Where is the US's leverage when it comes to these negotiations?
The most powerful nation in the world, with a president who has won a popular mandate of 77 million votes, with 12 nuclear aircraft carriers. There is no nation in the world that has greater leverage than the United States and the current incumbent president. So where's the leverage? Everywhere.
And if you share a border with Russia and maybe you're not a member of NATO, how worried should you be if you live in Georgia, for example?
Well, having very close ties to the region, with my parents having escaped Hungary, I am incredibly impressed with the nations that do border the Ukraine, who are the easterly members of NATO. I had very, very good meetings with one of the Baltic nations representatives here just last week. So we're very impressed with how those who have suffered under the jackboot of aiding in the Soviet Union, like our Baltic brethren, like Hungary, like Poland, understand the dire threat that is posed by proto-imperial forces on their easterly borders. So we here in the White House hope that those NATO nations will lead the way to show others amongst our allied forces how seriously they should take their own security as part of a shared alliance.
And finally, your message, or what message does it send out to any other leader, for example, President Xi of China, who might fancy invading another country, for example, Taiwan?
Oh, I think the president has been explicit. This administration is predicated on freedom, on prosperity, and above all else, national sovereignty. That's why we were so excited with the British people voting to leave the European Union and Brexit to reassert their national sovereignty. So if you believe
what about Ukraine's national sovereignty?
If you believe in the national sovereignty of your nation, we will support you. And seriously, look at what support we have given the Ukrainians in the last 3 years.
It's huge.
I don't think any, again, you're interrupting me and it's really not done. At the end of the day, we stand with any nation that wishes to implement its sovereignty and which shares our values. And we know that those amongst our civilization that share our values understand, and we stand next to them shoulder to shoulder.
But not the women killed in the maternity hospital in southern Ukraine.
Is that a serious statement? I mean, do you really have no shame?
May I finish my sentence now,
No
please?
shame. You have no
Not
shame.
the
That
women
is beneath
killed.
the BBC.
The women killed in the maternity hospital.
Products of the BBC. That is absolutely
The families killed in their own apartments
shameful.
in the capital.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
The people eating in a
I am
pizza
not
place.
even going to countenance replying to such an absolutely abhorrent statement.
Thank you very much for your time, Sebastian Gorka,
You're
live
welcome.
from the White House.